Hey, I'm Matt Mulholland. That's Remington Huggins. If you aren't tracking this specific date in your claims, then you're going to fail. Obviously, we're talking about the statute of limitations.
That's correct.
This is the statute of limitations episode. Here we go. We are talking about the statute of limitations. What is the statute of limitations, Remington?
So in insurance first-party claims, it's the time in which an insured has the ability to file suit against the insurance carrier, which preserves their rights under the insurance policy.
Okay, so why do they call it a statute?
Well, I want to clarify a little bit on this. For instance, North Carolina, South Carolina, and by the way, this changes per state. Okay, there's no like national blanket statute of limitations for first-party insurance claims. I'm just going to give you an example of a statute type example. South Carolina, North Carolina. You have 3 years from the date of loss to file suit against the insurance carrier. Across the board, that's the statute. Okay?
File from the date of loss?
Yes.
What if you file like 2 years after the date of loss? Does that mean you only got 1 year left?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, keep going.
So it's not the date you file the claim, it's the date of loss. Mm-hmm. So that is statute of limitations. You have
for
3
those
years.
states, right?
Across the board.
Okay.
I'm going to give you another example. State of Georgia. I call this, we call it statute of limitations just because everybody knows what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But really, it's the suit against us clause or legal action against us clause.
I've always called it suit limitation period.
There you go.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a great way to put it. And everybody's going to know exactly what you're talking
Right.
about. Okay. There's no statute in Georgia that says in first party claims, you have 3 years to file a lawsuit. You have 2 years to file a lawsuit. There's no statute that specifically says that. But there is case law that says whatever the insurance policy expresses is the suit against us period or legal action against us period. That's what the policyholder has to abide by and file suit before to reserve their rights. And
So
in Georgia, it's either 1 or 2 years, whatever the policy says.
Yeah, whatever the policy says. But there is a statute in Georgia, but it's only for fire type policies, is what it says. So for fire type policies, you have 2 years from the date of loss to file suit. But then the court system through case law has determined that fire type policies means an insurance policy, but only for the perils of fire and lightning.
Yes.
So for fire and lightning, you do have a 2 year in Georgia. So you got to pay attention. If you're in a state and there is a statute, it might have been interpreted differently than what you were interpreting it as in the court system. So you probably need to get a hold of an attorney in that state to find out if it has been interpreted differently like they did in Georgia, because Georgia screws everything up.
Georgia's a tough state, everybody. But Matt's exactly right. He's talking about the standard fire policy, which the Department of Insurance is saying all carriers have to abide by that. So the only caveat to what the actual policy says in Georgia, if it's 2 years or 1 year, if it's fire or lightning, like Matt says, it's 2 years across the board to file a lawsuit. And
that's the way it is for any state. If the statute is different from what the policy says, the statute would supersede it, assuming it's interpreted correctly in that state. So every policy has something at the end of it. I forget the specific term of the clause, but it says something to the effect of if state statutes are more strict or restrictive than what the policy says, the policy is automatically amended to have the state statute requirements. So, I forget the name of the clause suddenly, but it's usually at the very end of the policy. It might be the very end of Section 1, or it could be the end of Section 2 in a general condition type section, but it's there. And so anytime there is a statute or some kind of law that changes, it automatically amends the policy, almost like an endorsement does, but they don't change the language. And they might come out with the endorsement that changes the language so you can actually see it the next year, but it's instantaneously and automatically updates the policy whenever there is a new law, or at least from that date of loss forward.
Right. And just as an example, I'm using South Carolina, North Carolina again, because we already touched on this. There's policies that say you have 2 years to file suit in these South Carolina policies.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean anything. You know, the statute overrules that language in the policy.
It's 3 years.
It's 3 years.
Yeah.
So
Illinois is another one that's very confusing on a lot of this because there's a lot of weird stuff going on in Illinois, but it might be 3 years, it might be 2 years. We don't really. I know there's attorneys out there like that are very, very adamant. There's 3 years, and there's attorneys out there that are very, very adamant. It's 2 years. I don't know. I'm not an Illinois attorney, so I don't know. There's definitely some weird states about this kind of a thing.
Right.
There are also some states that have the suit limitation period from the date of notification of loss. That was
100% what I was just about to bring up.
Oh, yeah?
I've been seeing this more.
Yeah.
Where it's like the notice of loss, which I absolutely love, versus date of loss.
Gives you a full amount of time to actually work the claim before you have to file suit.
Exactly.
I mean, if I file a lawsuit against State Farm in Georgia on a hail claim, I got 1 year according to the policy, and I've got that 60-day demand for payment that needs to be put in, or I give up any rights to any kind of a bad faith ruling. So I got to give an attorney some time to put that together too. So really, I got 9 months. If I filed a claim at 10 months, then I've lost my ability to do any kind of a 60-day demand for payment before filing suit.
That is correct.
That's crazy.
It is. It's insane. It's something Georgia has got to change, and other states that have this same, principles of whatever the policy says, the policy controls. Think about it. And I'm bringing this up because Hurricane Helene came through Georgia, devastated Augusta and some other cities. A lot of people from out of state came to the storm, right, to help insureds. I can't tell you how many phone calls I've received talking about the suit limitations period. Now think about this. Helene happened the end of September 2024. Let's just call it 6.5 months ago, give or take. Right now, think about if somebody's house was devastated, had 2 trees through the roof of that house, completely destroyed the structure of that house. Right now, they literally have only 90 more days to try and resolve this claim before they need to get an attorney involved to send the 60-day demand to have that ability to have a bad faith count. They only have 90 more days, and they're not even living in their house right now. Like, it's insane.
That doesn't make any sense, really.
It doesn't.
I don't know why the National Association of Insurance Commissioners doesn't put this into their model act. It makes sense to have it from the date of notification of the loss. They already have a limited amount of time to file the claim with the carriers because of case law and prompt notice statutes and things along those lines.
Right.
So if they have to get it within that amount of time, at least give them the full amount of time to actually prove their loss and work the claim, and give the carriers time to be able to do all the stuff without having to go to litigation. They want to reduce the amount of litigation anyway, don't they?
You would
That's what
think.
they say.
Yeah, you would think. Think about this. There's policies that have 24 months of ALE. You have to file suit before your ALE even runs out. And what carrier is really going to keep on paying ALE when there's a lawsuit going on? Yeah. And also recoverable depreciation. There's a lot of times where there's policy language that you have up to 2 years to make the repairs.
That's
and
State
you have
Farm
to file
in Georgia.
Exactly.
Why would you collect RCV funds after the suit limitation period? What if they just say no? After the suit limitation period ends, you can still collect RCV, but you can't sue them if they don't pay you the RCV. What would happen?
Nothing. There's nothing you can do. You could file a complaint with the DOI, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere because they're going to say, look, this is the policy language. This is what you agreed to. You should have filed suit to reserve your rights.
Yeah.
And
so it puts you in a position where you have to file suit. Maybe you keep working the claim without going to litigation. Is that how that works? You'd have the suit on record?
You have the suit on record. You would have to serve it, though, onto State Farm. So it's going to go legal.
And once it goes legal, then everything that they do becomes almost a work product kind of a deal because there is a reasonable expectation of litigation at that point.
Well, there's
we
already
talked about that in a
litigation.
different episode. So it's there.
Exactly.
So it causes a lot of issues. You lose all leverage, really, once you pass that suit limitation period on a claim.
Absolutely. And you can bet insurance companies know when that suit limitations period is going on. I'm not saying every single adjuster does this because I think there's good actors on both sides and bad actors on both sides, but I can guarantee you there's some that drag their feet on purpose. No regular policyholder in the state of Georgia or some of these other states with these same restrictions of what the policy controls, has any idea they have 12 months to file suit. They look up on Google, how long do I have to file suit on breach of contract? And boom, it pops up 6 years. You know?
Because that's a tort case, right? And insurance is considered different.
Yeah, well, a breach of contract would be a contract, rather than tort.
Attorney.
But I know what you're saying.
You know what
you're saying.
Yeah,
but
it's got different rules. Insurance policies have different rules than typical contracts.
Yep. There's something else I do want to bring up. Okay, it's extremely important to have the certified copy of the policy, or if you're a contractor, have your client ask the agent, I want my entire policy. As the public adjuster, you can obviously request that and get that. This is what also I'm seeing. In the regular body of the insurance policy, they call it the multi-line portion of the policy. Mm-hmm. It'll say 2 years from the date of loss. The last page of this policy, that's like 96 pages, there's an endorsement, and it says, however, if it is a wind or hail loss, you only have 1 year to file suit. So this is new. I see it in Georgia Farm Bureau, I believe. But this is, now they're starting to do this too. And it's
I've seen a few of
my
these.
gosh.
Yeah, these endorsements, you got to keep in mind, for you contractors that are watching this, I know you PAs understand this and the attorneys understand this, but and maybe the policyholders that are watching this, there is an endorsement that changes the language of the policy. They take the original language, they strike some of it out, and they replace it with some other language. But they don't do it on the page. You have to do it yourself in your head as you're reading this. So if you go to the end and you see all the endorsements, some of it's going to change. And it might just remove a few sentences and change it. Sometimes it changes multiple times. They'll strike out this language and replace with this, and then the next one strikes out that language and replaces with a second set. So it depends on which one you read in what order. Because if you read the second one first, then you strike out that second set of language and replace it with the first set of language. So you have to pay attention on your deck page to what order the endorsements are listed in. This is why you get a certified copy of the policy, because you want them to certify what order the endorsements are in, or you might end up with the wrong language in the end. And it might change how the policy is worked. So there's a lot of benefits to getting a certified copy. Definitely get a copy of that policy and look for those endorsements. So if you were looking for that language on a PDF and hit Control F,
yep,
what words would you search for?
First, I go suit against us. Mm-hmm. If I don't see it, legal action against us. It's going to be one of the two, typically.
I've looked for the word action a lot of times, and I've looked for the word suit, and I usually find it there.
Yep.
Legal action against us. Let me ask, while you said action, here's a thing that is interesting and is in some newer policies, where they specify in the legal action against us that you cannot file suit and you cannot file or demand appraisal. Is appraisal an action?
It's not a legal action. Is that what you're asking?
That is, that's what they're insinuating.
It's not a legal action. I feel like it's definitely an action. It's something you can do to help resolve the claim, but in no way would I consider that legal action unless I have to file a petition to name an umpire. Then at that point it could be considered a legal action. But no, I don't see that. It's not legal action.
I don't think it is either.
There's no attorneys involved necessarily, right? You got two appraisers and you got an umpire and you got an insured and an insurance company. Like,
I mean, if the policy is going to specify no appraisal after the suit limitation period, then there is no appraisal because the policy specifies that. But if it doesn't say that, if it just says no action against us, don't let the carrier tell you that that is an action. Unless the policy specifies it, as some of the new ones do, don't let them say that you can't file for appraisal or demand appraisal.
Absolutely.
So, because they'll try that. They've tried it on me. And the Department of Insurance at the time agreed with them. Not that they can interpret that kind of a thing. But that's something that they try. So I don't think it's an action either. It's definitely not a legal action.
Yeah, it's not a legal action, 100%.
I mean, it's supposed to be an alternative to legal measures.
Right, 100%. You know, I just want to put everybody aware with this Helene situation. Like, seriously, if you're a contractor, if you're a public adjuster, if you're an attorney who doesn't dabble in first party a lot, you need to look at every single one of your clients. You need to make sure that they don't have that 1 year because it's literally right around the corner. It's right around the corner. And also, I do want to say this. I've talked to other attorneys about this 1 year suit limitations, and I don't like this because I advocate hard against it. But they're like, oh, well, it's just going to go legal sooner, you know? But it's like, no, man, like that's not the way you need to think about this.
Yeah.
You need to think about there needing to be enough time for the claim to go through the adjustment process and see what this end result is. If you have a Hurricane Helene where there's 2 trees sitting in your family room, that's not getting resolved anytime soon. It's just not, you know?
It's not going to happen in a few months.
Right.
It's too much documentation that has to occur.
Yep.
There's a lot to prove in order to get to a settlement amount that's agreeable.
Exactly.
So, yeah, the suit limitation period is a big deal, and it's something that everybody should be tracking. I wish it was a line item that was on the deck page.
That would be great.
That would be something that would be very, very beneficial for policyholders.
That would be great.
But, deck pages aren't standardized. That's a whole other issue.
Yep.
They should be.
It definitely should be. That's information I think should be, that's a great idea right there on the deck page.
Yeah.
We got these endorsements, da-da-da-da. And by the way, legal action against us is 2 years, whatever it might be.
I mean, liability has the accord form, and it's a standardized document.
Yeah.
How come homeowners insurance and building property insurance doesn't have a standardized deck page so that it's easy to read it and know what's in there right away?
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
I wish that would be a thing.
Yeah, NAIC. That should be a thing.
But yeah, I think, again, suit limitations is just important. I literally get phone calls from contractors, public adjusters, and attorneys asking me about it in Georgia. So
when you get close to the suit limitation period, when you get close to it and you're at that moment where you need to either hand it off to an attorney or decide not to, oftentimes, I'm just going to say it seems like this is what happens because I don't know for sure, but it's pretty obvious. Oftentimes, the carrier will make it seem like they're finally going to work with you, so you don't feel like you need to sue. And then the suit limitation period ends, and suddenly they say no again. I've seen it happen a lot. If they can convince a policyholder that they don't need to sue because they're finally working with them, that's diabolical, man.
it is. And that's what I was talking about, the whole dragging their feet on purpose. And also dangling the carrot, like you explained.
Dragging and dangling.
And there's a lot of people, and again, not every insurance company is horrible, but a lot of people do trust their insurance company, and they think they are going to do the right thing. Well, there goes the 1 year suit limitations, and suddenly the insurance company's silent.
Yeah.
So
Go figure.
I've seen it.
Now, having said that, I've had insurance companies pay claims after the suit limitation period. Sometimes you even get a good adjuster that does better than the one beforehand. So this is not an issue where you hit this line and it is just shut off. You just need to understand that you've lost your leverage. And so as a policyholder without any leverage, you don't have any way of pushing back if there is a problem. They might still take care of you. There's still good people at the carrier side.
Yes.
And even the companies that you would think would never do this have paid claims for me after suit limitation period. I've had State Farm do this for me several times. So there are good people there. It doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot continue to work with them, but you don't have any more leverage. And if they do anything bad, you can't do anything about it. So just keep that in mind.
I did this 2 weeks ago where I had a client contact the firm. I explained that the suit limitations has expired. I felt really bad for the client. They were in a tough situation. I was like, look, we can't file suit, but let me see if I can pull a rabbit out of the hat type deal. Try to work this. And like I said, that probably happened 2 months ago, and then 2 weeks ago, they paid the entire claim. So you're exactly right.
It happens.
I'm not saying it's like completely dead, but I'm telling you that it's rare.
It's definitely a rare thing, yeah.
So.
More often than not, they just say, we don't owe anything anymore or something along those lines.
Exactly.
I've had those claims very often. All right, so I think that if you're tracking dates, deadlines on things. This is one of those vital things that you track for every claim.
Right.
Is your suit limitation period. Go through, make sure that the endorsement hasn't changed what it is. Make sure that your statutes don't change what it is. Case law, find out what it is for your state or that policy, and make sure you're tracking that date in whatever software you're using for the claims handling. Or if you're a policyholder, make sure you know exactly where your cutoff is. Now, there is something else we should talk about with this topic. If there is a requirement to file a civil remedy notice or a 60-day demand for payment or anything along those lines, you need to know what that is too, because that has to happen before you file suit.
Great point. Like, example, the state of Florida, you now have to file or send a 10-day litigation notice. That 10 days has to expire for you to file suit. If it doesn't, that case will be dismissed.
And if you don't do that before the suit limitation period ends, then you're done.
You're cooked.
Yep.
Yep, you are. Also, just piggybacking off of the suit limitations period, or what did you call it? Time to file suit period.
Suit limitation period.
Oh, okay.
That's what I call it.
Okay, that's what I said. There's also the ability of like certain ways, and I don't want to get in the legal weeds on this, but like it's called tolling, where the policyholder and the insurance company agree to extend the suit against us period from 1 year to 18 months, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. There's always that ability too. Some insurance companies are more likely to do it than others. Some are absolutely not. And then also, every state's a little different on this. But for example, in Georgia, if you're in appraisal, that automatically actually tolls the suit limitations for that.
Doesn't happen that way in every state.
It
though,
doesn't.
so
No,
be careful.
No, that's 100%.
It's always a good idea. I think it's still a good idea, even in Georgia, because they'll fight you on it, to ask for the extension anyway, even though it's automatic.
I will only go into appraisal if they agree in writing for the tolling too. If not, I don't want to have to like fight that battle down the road if they just want to fight it because
so
they can.
That in the appraisal memo.
Yeah. So So I make them agree it is told in writing for X amount of times. And if they say, no, we're not doing that, then I simply say, well, you are forcing my client to file suit. This is on you.
Yeah.
So it's the truth. So I do that. That's the only way I would go past the suit limitations while an appraisal is if they agree in writing for that tolling.
Interesting. And if they're forcing a policyholder to file suit, is that in any way violating unfair claim practices, you think? To force them to file suit in order to gain the benefits of the policy is one of the items.
Yeah. I mean, here's the problem, and this is not every state, but a lot of states, like the Unfair Claim Settlement Practice Act, you don't have a private right of action.
True.
So what I'm trying to say is if they violate it, there's nothing that says, oh, well, every time they violate it, the insured gets $5,000. Like there's no right of action.
Can't call that bad faith necessarily, but it gives the Department of Insurance items to push them. You have to follow these rules, but that's the purview of the Department of Insurance. You can't sue for those things.
Right.
That's the private cause of action, right? That's what that means.
Yeah.
So if you can't sue for those things, you can't call them bad faith necessarily. It does cause some issues, but it might give you a little bit of, I don't know, does that give you leverage, being able to say that they forced them into litigation?
It does. I use everything I can for leverage, and Unfair Claim Settlement Practice Act, Georgia's 1 through 15, and as many of those elements I can pick out, I'm definitely using as ammunition. There's no doubt. On the other hand, let's think about Florida. Like you have the CRN, which actually gives you leverage.
The civil remedy notice.
Yeah, the civil remedy notice where they're violating, X, Y, Z. You can use that as leverage versus some other states such as Georgia where Unfair Claim Settlement Practice Act, you don't have that vehicle to have it as like actual leverage, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So.
Well, shit, man. I think we really nailed this topic down. Is there anything more that we should talk about for this?
No, I guess a shameless plug is I'm posting an article on this exact issue early next week. So go to the Huggins Law website. show your team. I emphasize all these points. It's just important, because it's protecting the insured. And if it goes past that suit limitations period, their protections are gone.
By the time this airs, it'll probably be posted, actually.
There you go. So go to the website, check it out.
There you go. All right, cool. Thanks, man.
Yep.